Hello and welcome to This Week in 40K. I am not Colin and he is not Billy. I am Billy Heilman and this is...
Ben, how are you? Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you, Ben. We had about 15 minutes of actually talking before this to get to know each other. But Ben, as aficionados of the network will know, is one of the co-hosts of Frontiers, doing a wonderful job telling us about the world of 40K beyond the shores of America and the UK. Colin is off on work trip today, and so we have a guest host because the point of This Week in 40K is that we come to you every week in 40K and tell you what you're supposed to be talking about for the rest of this week. We have a fun show today, if my technology will ever agree with me. So let's get started with the top story.
Our top story.
So actually, Ben or Benny? You're Benny on the Discord. You're Ben right here.
Yeah, I'm whatever. I'm whatever you want me to be. That's absolutely fine.
Don't threaten me with a good time. So Ben, the top story this week is what we were talking about, is that the meta is in just a shockingly good place right now. When you go through all of the results, it's just a lot. It looks like when you go into the GW website and you click on 40K and it expands out the whole list of factions that you can buy miniatures from, that's sort of what the list of results looks like.
It does, doesn't it? I think there was like 10 different factions in all the top fours.
Yeah.
Across the board or something like that, I read. So that's pretty exciting stuff. It almost seems a bit too good to be true.
Yeah, and it was 10 unique winning factions. So even more than that across the entire set of top fours from the set of events that I'd actually be really interested to know why they picked 25 players in 5 rounds, but that seems to be the arbitrary point that everyone cares about now. So that is what it is. We had 10 unique winning factions out of 11 events, but again, just a laundry list of other factions. I have my own theories about why in this post-Nephilim world we're so diverse, but do you have any broad thoughts on that topic?
It seems to be, I hate to say it, seems to be the way that they've balanced the secondaries in this most recent mission pack seems to have, I don't want to say it, kind of given strength to certain factions who didn't have it and stuff like that before. So it seems to be, they seem to be pushing into at least experimenting with balancing with secondaries, which is, seems a bit icky to say, but it certainly seems the way the top 2 factions are farming points there. So,
well, why do you think it's so? Actually, my take is that that's not icky at all. I think that's actually incredibly interesting. There are so many different knobs that they can turn, and this is just them turning a knob they never have before. And my take is GW is being consistent at updating the game. Like, we are actually getting updates every 3 months that we asked for in that survey way back when, which is, depending on your version of way back, very way back. But I think it's just an interesting new way to play the game. I'm curious why you said it was icky.
I think it's a lot of people didn't want it to be actually balanced like that. I think as much as they want it, well, from what I've heard, they don't want it to be balanced on rules. They thought that's why points are there. That's why a lot of people say that. Is their response to that? Certainly in where I've been talking to people, but I actually quite like it because it's felt like something they've never done before. So it's changed. It really feels like this mission pack feels different. Like 9th edition feels different than 40K does in general for this. Yeah. And it feels quite good. I actually quite enjoy it. So
yeah, no, I completely agree. I think that's been the general tone and tenor of almost every conversation I've had, is that, there are all those memes about wargamers and us being sort of the worst, but like specifically hating change. Like, not just your baseline, oh, they changed the Facebook layout, I'm never using it again, as you type it on Facebook, but just a general hate of change. And then, but I also love Nephilim, and the games play out well, and I can bring the army that I want to bring and broadly feel like I have a chance at winning, unless you play Guard or Demons, and that's your own fault.
Yeah, well, I mean, look, it feels like I heard someone on the Discord say today it's been nearly 5 years since they've had a new book for Demons. I think it was sitting at nearly 5 years for Tyranids as well, because it was 2017. I'm pretty sure their book came out. But
Okay.
yeah, 5 years is a long time, right? Like, and I know COVID stopped that,
Yeah.
slowed that right down. But it certainly feels like, just get them out now, get them out quickly, get them done.
Well, and I know that there are some very frustrated Demon players in our Discord as well who got the
Yeah,
teaser, that beautiful cover, and then just not getting any leaks whatsoever, which we'll get to when we talk about the lack of new leaks. Yeah, I mean, in the old days, 5 years was sort of the default amount of time that it would take for a book to come out, but we have gotten spoiled that we expect, every at least once an edition, and those editions are every 3 years or so. And with the rumored of 10th edition coming out, that will be a tough pill to swallow for those books. But other than them, the meta is in a truly wonderful place. I know I'm having a lot of fun with Inari list, which is very different than ones we're going to talk about a little later. Benny, you were telling me beforehand about the armies that you were playing. So what are you doing in 40K at the moment?
Oh, I'm playing Tyranids mainly. I was being a bit of a snowflake at the beginning of the season. I couldn't really seem to get them to work for me, ironically, when they were working for everyone else when they were really strong.
Okay.
But I kind of played around with them a bit and kind of found a list that suited my style, and I've just been playing, enjoying the play style of Tyranids quite a lot. It's good. It's good fun. It's very board control based, and I quite enjoy it. So yeah, it's good.
There do seem to be a reasonable variety of builds. I know my current nemesis is playing an obscene amount of Leviathan Warriors and 2 Harpies, which is just a joy to be on the other side of the table against. But yeah, it's a good time to be a bug.
That's right. Well, yeah, we haven't actually. I say this on Frontiers all the time, so I'm sorry for anyone who's listening to this, but we literally haven't been able to buy a Harpy kit in Australia since November.
Huh.
So, or since or maybe it was December when Crusher came out. Like, you couldn't get them. So anywhere. So yeah, it was. It's been a bit wild. So so I haven't actually got any Harpies. So
Fair
I
enough.
can't run any. So yeah.
It fundamentally changes the way the army plays, and for your opponent's sake, they thank GW. But speaking of GW, let's go on to the what is new.
What's new?
So actually not a ton new this last week. We've hit a little bit of a doldrums in the overall rumor spell. The most interesting new thing that I could find in terms of the game itself was there's some cool new, and I'm just going to call them dwarf berserkers because I'm really old, and that's how I think of them. The Leagues of Votann, what are they actually just called berserkers?
I think no, they're Chthonian.
Chthonian
Chthonian
berserkers. So they did.
I was so shocked they put Chthonian at the beginning of it that I was just like couldn't even remember after it. It's like, what?
It is a wonderful word. It refers to the deep earth.
Yeah,
it's from the ancient Greek. So what are your thoughts on these models?
I haven't liked really any of the squat range up until this point, basically. Okay. I am a massive fan of them, like enough that I've now taken like a little side eye glance at them a little bit now. So I've not liked any of the vehicles or weird stuff or anything that they've come out. Just they're a bit bubbly for me. There's just a bit, that's all it is for me. It's just those berserkers, I like that. I love that type of stuff. So yeah, I'll be interested to see what else they come out with.
Yeah, the one thing I do. So I have been playing GW games for longer than probably a good chunk of our listeners have been alive because I'm an old man, and I've always been on the high elf Eldar side of things. So dwarves they're my natural frenemy. I have just I know they're on the same side fighting the bad guys in every world, and let's not get into bad guys, good guys, especially in 40K. It was a little more cut and dry in fantasy. So they're on my side, but they're not my people. I do think that I think these guys are cool and interesting. I haven't minded the entire Votann aesthetic. My big thing with them is if you're going to come out with a new faction 30 some years into the game, it should be distinct. And I feel like they have been distinct thus far. Obviously squats were a thing way back when, but the entire range of 40K was so much smaller. I mean, Necrons and Tau didn't exist when squats did. So, and Tau sort of ate some of their idea space of actual high technology that works. So I'm curious to see how they remain distinct. I think these minis are really cool. And having some a little bit more feral dwarves feels very good to me.
It does, isn't it? I used to collect dwarfs back in fantasy, so I used to have a huge army. So I don't need too much to tip the scales for me to want to look into them. I'm looking forward to what else they release, because I remember when they put the Sisters range out and it just kept on coming.
Yeah,
all this good stuff, and I feel like this is going to be very similar. So it's quite exciting, really.
Yeah, let's derail the conversation for a second. War of the Beard obviously incorrectly won by the dwarves in fantasy, correct?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
Oh, okay. I was actually trying to troll you. If you were a dwarf fan, you would think it was properly won.
No.
You dirty people.
No. I used to be into the Lizardmen and everything. Though I used to have a few Wood Elves. I used to love my Wood Elves. They're my first fantasy album. So yeah.
Oh, okay. Okay. So, yeah. Benny, I knew we got along and liked each other.
Yeah. That's right. Wood Elves are awesome. They've just you can only so many treemen you can own, though, isn't there? Really, after a while. So
they're sort of the rustic cousins of the good guy high elves. But all right, we'll move on, because this is This Week in 40K, not This Week.
Yeah, that's right. That's
Warhammer Fantasy Nostalgia. Although if anyone wants to watch that show. The other big thing that GW announced was less an announcement and more of a hype, but just the final few GW events this season, at least in the US, coming up in Kansas City and Chicago, and then culminating in somewhere in New Mexico. I don't believe they've expanded out to Down Under. Do you have any thoughts on the GW events? Do you have any plans to come to one? Is that an aspirational goal?
I would definitely love to come to one day. But it's on the long list of events I'd love to go to at the same time. So hopefully, I'm hoping, like, by this time next year they're announcing one Down Under, because it would sure get a lot of hype down here. So there'd be a lot of people very keen for
it. To me, the biggest differentiator for them is the terrain, and they're really the main proponent of the most fixed terrain throughout an event that you're going to see. Like, obviously, WTC has fixed tables, but they have so many. GW has the two, and I know most people tend to prefer one of those two. Having never been to an event, I'm not sure which one it is. Are there any events that you've done that have tried to adopt that?
No, we've got no events. Pardon me. We've got no events over here that have GW style terrain. We have, I think, what shapes the Australian kind of meta, and people think it's strange, is literally because we play on. We use quite dense terrain overall.
Oh, really?
And we use like, we have certain ruins, and we do practice on WTC stuff as well. So when we do team stuff, so we're very much flipped between those two. So player placed is extremely rare over here as well. So
definitely the inverse here, especially west coast of the US where I live, is almost all player placed. And I will admit I am a mild part of that problem running the RTTs that I do. It's just a lot easier at that level. But one of the things that I would GW some free product development advice: sell mats that we can put your terrain on top, so we can mimic your terrain layouts. I don't understand why that's not something that they've marked up infinite times from, like, just a piece of plexiglass you could probably buy for $0 at a plastic store. But I have been kicking around the idea of just getting a lot of mats or outlines of terrain, putting stuff down and trying GW, because almost everyone I know who's gone to those events has said the terrain works really well.
I've heard the same. Because when you look at it on the table, it looks extremely simple, and it quite bland, really. But I mean, no one's really got too many bad things to say about it. So seems pretty good.
It's almost like they designed the game playing it on those kinds of boards. So maybe it's just supposed to work that way.
Who knows?
Right? The other thing that I wanted to talk about is, at least in the US, the big thing that everyone shapes their year around is Las Vegas Open. I know you guys have something relatively similar down in Australia. What's the name of it? You have one like
it's called Upright. Uprising Adelaide. That's
Yeah.
our ITC Championships. Yeah, and the tickets just went out, are going on for sale tomorrow. So that's pretty exciting. There's been a couple of little pre-releases, sneaky ones here and there. But it should be. They've got the biggest venue they've ever managed to get. The cap's going to be 225 players. So it could potentially, if we fill it up, be the biggest 40K event ever in Australia. So we're really hoping. I think they've already got 100 on pre-order. So
nice.
So, yeah.
So this is actually hopefully going to be my first year going to LVO. Life or COVID has managed to stop the last 3 times I've wanted to. But the reason I bring it up is, to my mind, GW coming into events and having an actual year ender, it strikes me as interesting that independent events are still seen as the end goal, aspirational thing to go to at the end of the year. And I'm wondering what your thoughts are on what it would take for the GW event to take that mantle as something that, people will talk about the whole year, not talking about LVO, but talking about the GW season championship. What are your thoughts there?
Well, that's a really interesting question, I have to be honest. And it would have to have some sort of either integration or collaboration with FLG, and kind of getting in the same ballpark and kind of figuring out, because GW have to know the meaning of what the ITC rankings does for the game at the top level, and it's kind of more about being like amalgamating and bringing that together, wouldn't it, really, and combining that, I think, because the LVO's just got, not only is it, from like an observer's point of view, seems to have quite a spiritual home for it as well, so there'd have to be some sort of collaboration there as well, I think with that. So
that makes sense. I definitely see GW pushing these events more and more, and one of my, if you're writing down predictions for the future on the back of a napkin, one of mine would be that there in 5 years, people talk about the GW season ender, at least in the same breath, if not ahead of, LVO and Adelaide.
I wouldn't be surprised.
So that is mostly what was new this week. Let's talk about what's winning.
What's winning?
So as we discussed at the top of the show, it was an incredibly diverse weekend with 10 of 11 different winners. We're going to just quickly run down some of the bigger events. There was the Palm Springs Open in Palm Springs, California, because in the middle of a global heat wave, don't you want to just go to a desert for a weekend? That was won by Inari. We'll touch on that later. Followed up by Necrons, Harlequins, Death Guard, tons of others at 5 and 1. And Ben, if you have any thoughts on any of these, just jump in and say things. Otherwise, I'm going to just sort of run through a couple more events. There was the Beast in the East Midlands in Lincoln Drill Hall, England. I don't know what it is about foreign place names, but they always just charm the hell out of me. That one was won by Necrons, 6 and 0. There was Craft World, Gene Stealer Cult, Tyranids, Thousand Suns, Death Watch, all at 5 and 1. So again, like armies that I didn't even mention in the first event were the ones
so that diverse.
I know, it's really fun. Speaking of fun place names, DZTV 40K GT, because they just want acronyms, July in Sutton Veny, England, 44 players. This one won by Iron Hands, followed up by Black Legion, Imperial Knights, Drukhari, Word Bearers, Chaos Knights. Again, armies that I did not say in either of the previous 2 events.
Solid chaos showing there too as well.
Yeah, well, we talked about that last week when Anthony had the first real breakthrough event with Chaos Space Marines. And I don't know what your take on Chaos Space Marines are. I will throw a little bit of shade, and I say this with love as someone who has Chaos Space Marines filling up large parts of his closet. There seems to be a tendency in the Chaos Space Marines player base to just take a good list and aggressively try their best to make it, we'll call it unique. We won't say bad, we'll say unique. And I think it took a few people breaking through and just showing, no, you put this giant Terminator brick in the middle, you surround it by Possessed, and then you flavor it to your Legion to taste, and it works. Do you have any thoughts on the Chaos Space Marine situation?
I'm excited for them. I've got a friend of mine painting some up for me. Hopefully. was looking for a book to deep dive, I think it's got heaps of variety in it.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's definitely a melee heavy book, but that's fun. But it seems like it seems pretty strong. It doesn't seem overpowered.
No.
It seems like it fits right in, at
Yeah.
the moment, and it's causing another problem, another thing that you have to counter. Another thing: can you kill 10
Mm-hmm.
Terminators running at
Yes.
you? Because they're not going to stop running at you, and they're going to honor the prints into you. So,
Yes.
they're going to be right into you. So how can you get rid of them? So it's like another bit of a stat check that you've got to go through and see if you can actually deal with that in your list. So I think it's brilliant. It's another shake up.
Mm-hmm.
Perfect.
So is your friend painting up Emperor's Children? If you're mentioning Honor the Prince,
I'm going to get a generic scheme actually, because
okay.
there's more than Emperor's Children I want to try. There's the Word Bearers. There's Black Legion. Look fun. Like people getting results for Black Legion. So
we just talked about it.
I know, amazing. So like, there's so much of it I want to try.
Yeah.
And then Demons will probably be here by the time I get it. So it's all very exciting.
Yeah. So for me, I've managed to find some Eldar stuff that I enjoy, so I haven't had to pull Chaos out. But Emperor's Children would definitely be my route. There was that when the Lord Discordance came out, 3 Lord Discordance are right up there in the most fun I've ever had playing 40K, and the models are brilliant. Just don't be Anthony Vanilla and have it be the absolute first GW model you ever put together, because that would be freaking miserable.
Oh, that is so miserable. Why would you do that to yourself?
You don't know.
You don't know.
But actually, you brought up something interesting. I'm going to slightly derail us here. Of it, the idea that the Terminator brick is a stat check that you need to have an answer for, and I do think that there are answers. I know the one that I'm leaning towards right now is 6D cannons, because opening up mini black holes will just kill Terminators. I'm curious.
Yeah,
I know you said not quickly, and they'll live through some amount of it because transhitman -1 to wound, 5 up invul or 4 up invul if you're really crazy. I don't know if you can get 4 up, but 5 up invul and 5 up feel no pain. You'll still live, but I will slowly chip away. What's your current answer to 10 Terminators charging at you?
Well, towards the end of Narcomoond, I was playing 12 Zoanthropes. And using mortal wounds and spore mines and stuff like that. I think in one turn I had my list do about 36 mortal wounds in one turn with the combination of a lot of things going on. And I think that I did play into an Children's of Bile Terminator brick. And I brought as 9 Zoanthropes to that just to kind of see if that would help, and that kind of I got rid of a fair few of them. So I think that's going to be the way I think I'm going to have to go. I'll just go back to the Zoanthropes. I love my brain bugs, so I'll use them. I'll just be happy to get those out again. So I think that's the go. But they're definitely they put you under pressure, right? Those Terminators, especially if they're Emperor's Children, like they're pressing a button and they're pressing it harder and harder and harder. It's like you've got to hurry up, get rid of them because you're in trouble.
So. For sure. Brain bullets are a good answer to all of them, but Word Bearers. Yeah. Word Bearers have a little bit more.
Yes, they do. They do.
All right. Well, that digression aside, there was RopeCon 2022 in Helsinki, Finland. We won't discuss what the internet might do if you search that name without 40K attached to it. That one was won by Craft World at 5-0. There was Tyranids 3-1-1, Custodes making, I believe, the first time I mentioned them, 4-0-1. So a lot of ties. I bet you this was a differential scoring event.
Yeah,
as many ties as I'm seeing. 40K GTTJ Cafe and Games in Milford, Mass. We do love our acronyms in this hobby. Craft World Dark Angels, Craft World Thousand Suns. W4, I was getting some intellectual dyslexia there. I wanted to switch that. W4 GT 2022 in Eau Claire, Wisconsin. Sisters, Clowns, Dark Angels, Inari. I should look and see if that Inari list is closer to my heart. Down in your neck of the woods broadly by Hemisphere. I don't know if the North and South GT in Hobart, Australia. Is it all?
Yes, it is. That's one of the states, not too close, but there's some familiar faces and names there. So lovely. I know that one well.
Well, I know another interesting aside. I know various places in 40K have very different sense of what's nearby. For example, if you play in England, a 40-minute drive is nearby and maybe even far. I can't get to more than one game store within 40 minutes of me, and there's never been a GT that close. People drive 4 or 5 hours here. What's nearby? What does nearby count as for you?
Nearby, so there is the occasional GT at my nearest game store, which is about 40 minutes away.
Okay.
But generally nearby is like traveling to Sydney. So I live about 2 hours up from Sydney, 2 hours north. So traveling down to Sydney, and the state of New South Wales is probably one of the most active states in Australia. So anywhere within the state, but the state's pretty big, so it can be like there has been 6-hour drives done last month, but interstates usually, depending on what state it is, like Tasmania is definitely pushed like 3 or 4 hour flight. I think it was probably not 4 hours. I think it's more like maybe 2 or 3. But that's definitely, because that's like an island off the bottom of Australia too. So it's like,
and they have cute animated devils.
They do, and it's an amazing place though. So I'd love to go there and take the family there as well when I went there and play. But that was one by Drukari.
Yes,
of all places, Drukari, and then that was Matt Morosoli from Art of War, and then we had Adam Camilleri in second, and then we had 2 of the local big boys, Shannon and Lance, there with Tyranids and Harlequins. So that's Drukari, Grey Knights, Harlequins, and Tyranids. Like, this is, another random lineup there, isn't it?
Yeah. Followed by Space Wolves and Salamanders and Orcs.
Salamanders, wow.
So to the conversation that we were having earlier, the only armies that I am not seeing on all of this are guards and demons. I can't think of a single army that we haven't talked about otherwise.
Yep, that's right. I was about to say Tau, and I just looked straight away at the next one. So I was like, oh, there you go.
Yeah.
So that's last week, but yeah, they're still there. They're still around.
Yeah, actually, that's fascinating. I'm not seeing a single Tau in any of these.
No, there's not actually.
Oh no, there was one here at the 40K GT TJ Cafe and Games in Milford. There's a Tau that went 4-1, another 4-1 at W4. So yeah, everyone is showing up. All right, just to give people their quick time in the sun. Grand Battery in Gibraltar, 5-0 Tyranids, Custodes and Knights, High Noon Showdown in Oklahoma City, Oklahoma, Clowns, Orc Sisters, Armed Forces Day in Lockport, Illinois, 5-0 Grey Knights, then Imperial Knights and Necrons, and then people start falling below the threshold. Although again, shout out to just wonderful place names. Tithe Barn, England. We don't have places like Tithe Barn. Boy, that must have some rich history there. So yeah, the meta's in this really wonderful place where you have to be a good player, but as long as you're not trying to bring a list that can't win, you can end up finishing 4-1. It's not the list, it's you. So
a choice of armies, like a choice about this, and it's good, different styles to play within a lot of those armies too, which is nice.
Yeah, very much. So going from what's winning to, I guess we don't have a little clip for our favorite lists of the week, or if we do, Chris is our producer who makes these. I apologize, I was not able to find it. Let's just talk about our favorite lists. And the one that I'm going to talk about is Chase Campbell, the winner of the Palm Spring Open's Ynnari list. I'm doing this very selfishly because Ynnari is what I'm currently playing and noodling around with. Chase is managing to bring almost entirely different units than what I'm doing. He does have the Incarn in there because the Incarn is just amazing. And I would actually say that anyone who enjoys big braining in 40K, you owe yourself one game with the Incarn. Just because every single activation almost, there is an option for something to do with the Incarn, whether it's yours or your opponent's. Like, you kill me, this could be an Incarn. I activate my Incarn, I fight somewhere else. I could hop. I might not.
It's so stressful to play against. It's so stressful to play against. Yeah, it's brilliant.
Yeah, the hair on my arm is literally rising as I think about it, which is an interesting thing for a grown-up to have happen with a toy soldier, but it's truly happening right now. So he's got an Incarn, he's got a Farseer, a Shadow Seer, a group of Warlocks on bikes, Cabalites, Rangers, Howling Banshees, Striking Scorpions, notably Mortal Wound Howl Banshees, not 2 damage Howling Banshees. Some more Warlocks, Shroud Runners, which are an interesting pick, although one of the small digression. Eldar have a what I would call a bug in their army list in that they just die. There's nothing you can do to make an Eldar miniature not just die if your opponent wants to. Inari turned that into a feature because when they just die, oh look, there's an in card. It's just sitting there doing nasty things to you. And Shroud Runners are jet bikes that can get a cover save and can pregame moves. They can be in a really annoying place to just die. There's a Falcon, 3D cannons, and then probably the piece that was just the most surprising, 2 flyers, a Hemlock Wraithfighter and a Void Raven Bomber, followed up by Baharoth in an auxiliary. So there's just a ton of weird random stuff in this, and I could not for the life of me figure out what the army was doing until there were 2 clues for me. One is the name of the army list. He listed it as Nuclear Inari. So, okay, he's trying to do some sort of explosions. And then you look at the Farseer's powers, and he has one that I'm not going to lie, I had to look up, and I've been playing Eldar since they've been out. Focused Will. Off the top of your head, have you ever heard anyone cast Focused Will against you? Yeah. That's the one that gives +2 to someone else's cast. And what that does is it lets you juice up some of your Mortal Wound powers. And if you go back and realize that this thing is sort of doing what your NIDs were doing, where you're dumping 36 Mortal Wounds, this list can do something similar. There's a Inari power that can plop a 9-inch bubble off of the model, so more than 18-inch radius circle of every enemy unit, roll 3 dice, and on a 4, it's a Mortal Wound. He has that on his Hemlock Wraithfighter. Hemlock Wraithfighters can get very centrally located in an opposing army and then just blow that up. You have the Void Raven to do bombs. So my sense is that this army just does damage in a way that you do not think of it when you look at it. Because you look at it and it looks incredibly light on the ground, and none of the guns attached to anyone's arms are things that you have a mental heuristic that, oh, this is scary.
And then, it doesn't make sense. It's confusing almost, isn't it? I love it. It's great. I didn't even notice that. That's so good.
Like I said, because again, some people were messaging me in Discord because while I am by no means a good player, I have been very active in the Best in Tabletop Discord Eldar section about this is what I'm doing with Inari. We're trying to get a conversation going, trying to iterate. And a few people messaged me this week of WTF, how the heck is this army winning? I had a similar thought, and then trying to dive into it, it's certainly the exact opposite from what I'm trying to do. I'm trying to make Inari allow clowns to punch well, which, by the way, they do. This one it's basically leaning into Inari actually have a really good psychic tree, and it's the Void Raven Bomber. If you believe that your planes can stay alive, that thing can do a lot of damage. And so that's really and then Kabalite Warriors are super cheap. But it's just the Void Raven and the Kabalite that are taking advantage of Inari's ability to soup in all of the elves, which good luck making your first Inari list because the amount of restrictions there is just ridiculous. But yeah, it's a very interesting list. It will be everywhere on the board. You are not going to be faster than this army. Clowns are the only thing that can match that. And it's going to do a lot of Mortal Wounds. And going through Chase's matchups, it looks like he managed to place into much more elite armies. So he probably had a decent sense of like the winners meta that he had to go through. Because he was from the Southern California team, Xenos Petting Zoo. And so, I think it's the sort of thing where one of the better players down there has a sense of who he needs to beat and took a very interesting and sort of offbeat way of doing it. So kudos to you, Chase Campbell. You are, depending on how the Batman quote goes, either the champion we need or deserve. I've never really understood which one of those is supposed to be better. So Bane, did you manage to find a list that you wanted to chat about?
I did. Now I haven't gone too deep into it, but I'm always a sucker for a good GC occult list. We've got Greg Chamberlain's from the Beast in the East Midlands GT. So Greg's a pretty well-known player. And he's taken a myriad cult, which everyone seems to be doing at the moment. So it's got the Agile Gorillas, which is remain stationary. if count as remaining stationary if you move or advance. Industrial Affinity, which is no penalty for industrial weapons. War Convoy as well, which is basically gives vehicles, mining vehicles, a 6-up field no pain. So he's got no Patriarch. He's just got a battalion. He's got an Icon Ward, Magus, and Primus. He's got the loads of Acolyte hybrids, all with rock cutters, so they'll be hitting on 3s with his myriads, which is nice. A lot of MSU there. He's got 15 neophytes with it's a 20-man squad of neophytes with seismic cannons, and it's got the lying in wait, so he can use that for he can bring that within deep strike of 3 inches, but not charge it. Just outside of 3, so he can use that for massive move blocking and stuff like that, which was really useful in stuff like the Necron matchups and stuff, I imagine. If they don't get enough board space, he's got lovely amount of characters there. Killamorph, Nexus, Fuel Strain, but this is my favourite part of the list. There's 2 huge blobs of Adelan Jackals. So he's got maxed out with double wolf quad in each. So there's that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 jackals. That's 16 plus. That's 26 wounds in that squad, basically.
Okay.
Each squad, and they have a 6-up feel no pain, and they can get revived by the Icon Ward, I think.
Okay.
And then he's got 3 Goliath trucks with the demolition charges. So they're almost like, the best way to describe them would be like Genestealer Cult Talos. So they can go up so they're just the Goliath trucks. It's just the transports. I thought they were the rock grinders for a second there. Sorry, my apologies. I got that wrong.
Okay, so not Talos.
No, but he can. No, they're not Talos. Just they're just a very good Rhino. So they can. He's got the demolition charges on them, so he can blow them up and charge them into people and auto blow them up and stuff like that. So he's got some cool stuff in there.
Okay. Again, just proving that it is possible to win with almost anything, because I know the rumors of Genestealer Cult's demise were circulating, but if people can make them work, and that is a list archetype of mechanized Mad Maxi kind of Genestealer Cult that I certainly haven't seen on the table. That's very cool.
Brilliant. Be very hard to kill once it's in your face and it's into you. It'd just be very hard to get rid of. Those bikes are very annoying.
Okay. You guys heard it here, probably first. Bike Genestealer Cult is the way going forward. Direct all your comments, criticisms, and concerns to Bennyway on Frontiers. So you have to watch Frontiers in order to do that.
You can email Sam. You can email Sam Lemon direct, and he'll take my complaints and forward them on to me. So.
Well, speaking of Sam Lemon, I have been delinquent in interacting with chat, but just to show. He said this, nada. Just putting it out there.
He's a darling, isn't he? What a darling.
You're a wonderful man, Sam. For those listening to the podcast later, he said we're the 2 sexiest blokes in 40K. I leave that for you to decide. But that is going to wrap up the pre-prepared stuff from the 2 of us. But that is not the end of the episode. We are now going to go to Hank's List Corner, where he talks to Best in Tabletop's Nick Olson-Johnson, affectionately known as Naj, who's having a lot of success with Necrons. And now we're going to get into the most perilous part of this particular episode, where I attempt to make technology that I have not tested out work. So, hopefully by clicking this button, it will be Hank talking to Naj, and Ben and I are going to go off the screen because some of our feedback has been it looks just a little weird with us looking at our phones while listening. So here, hopefully, comes Hank and Naj.
All righty, everybody. Welcome to another rendition of the ever-evolving Hank's List Corner here on the Best in Tabletop Network. Today we have Nick, the famous Naj, with us today to talk to us about Necrons, the risen ancient menace that is storming tournament tables the world over with their this past weekend they were at 60-70% win rate, something on that order. So we're just going to go ahead and start banging on through it. Naj has a pretty cool list that we're going to look at. Weekend before last, I played it. Yep. I played against it a couple of times, and let me tell you guys, this list is not messing around. It's pretty rough. All right, Naj. So let's go ahead and go into our first question. Question number 1 of our initial segment, the basics. What is the list?
Yeah, the list currently, my current version, I made a few changes to it recently. It is 3 detachments, a Vanguard, an Outrider, and a Supreme Command. All right. So in the Supreme Command, I have the Silent King leading the army. I do have his Warlord trait purchased. I have a Vanguard and Outrider, and amongst those 2 detachments, we have a Technomancer with the Canoptech Cloak. We have a Chronomancer with the Lance. We have 3 squads of 3 Tomb Blades with just no upgrades, just like the basic gun, like the Particle Beamer. 3 individual Locust Heavy Destroyers with the 3d3 damage gun. Sure. And then 3 squads of 6 Scorpic Destroyers, 3 Canoptech Plasma Sights, a Transcendent Catan with Transdimensional Thunderbolt and Time's Arrow, the Void Dragon with Sky of Falling Stars and his unique power, Voltaic Storm. Yep. And I think that's it.
Okay. Yeah. And so I assume the Transcendent Catan has the ability that lets him cast 2 powers.
Yeah, he does have Cosmic Tyrant as his personality, so he can cast 2 powers at the end of the movement phase instead of 1.
Cool. Good to know. All right, so it's a pretty basic set of models. And what is your Tomb World?
Oh, my Tomb World. Yeah. I almost forgot because it's pretty much default in every list. That
is true.
Relentlessly Expansionist for the pregame move, and Eternal Conquerors for the army-wide OBSEC.
Both instant complete classics. It gives you more. It lets your units move up the table quicker, and it gives everything in your army OBSEC. Which who doesn't like OBSEC? OBSEC is pretty friggin' great. Okay, and it's 3 detachments, and neither of those are either a battalion or a patrol, right? Yeah, you said it was a Supreme Command, a Vanguard, and an Outrider?
Yep.
Okay, so the Silent King, he's your Warlord, obviously. He gives you 3 command points?
He gives me 3 command points, so I'm starting with 9.
Okay, and you're spending just like 6 of that right off the top, goes into your 2 3-cost detachments, and then you said you bought 1 Warlord trait?
Yeah, I have the King's Warlord trait right now. That is the Warlord trait that lets you assign 1 command protocol to 2 battle rounds instead of 1. Still debating whether or not it's worth it. Sure. Yeah, it's what I was used to playing before the CP changes. Sure. And I think when I get more comfortable with some matchups, I'd be okay rotating that out when I can like predict which turns into which matchups the protocols are going to be more useful.
That makes perfect sense. And just in case anyone is unaware, they decently changed up how command protocols worked recently in one of the FAQs. Now it's the one that you don't pick basically just becomes a buff that lasts all game, right?
Yep. The one that you do not assign any battle round is active all game.
Which is just really good.
Yeah. Oh. So I often find it difficult choosing between the +1 inch move all game or the +1 strength on the charge all game. So that's why I like the King's Warlord trait. So I can like make one of those on like my go turns if I need to.
That makes sense. I mean, yeah, you have 18 Scorpex and punchy Silent King, who now gets all of his own rerolls and everything. So it makes sense that +1 strength would be tempting over +1 speed. Okay, we're going to go ahead and move right along, right on schedule this time, into our next question. So, and this right here, I feel like, is the most important part of this list. What is this list's plan? Like, what's its secondary plan? How's it going to score its points? And is it like an aggressive or a defensive-oriented list?
Yeah, so I played this list a few times now, and I think we've all heard how ridiculous the Necron secondaries are right now. And so I've been taking just like 3 Necron secondaries in most of my games just to get a feel for how that is. And yeah, they're very strong. They pretty much are telling my opponent that I'm going to score 42 if you don't come and fight me, like 42 to 45. So you can kind of, this list plan is to leverage that strength, wait for your opponent to come to you, and then when they like cross that midline and come into your threat range, then you get to go out and punch them as you choose. So, and that plan has worked out for me pretty well.
Okay, cool. Well, let's go ahead and go through, like, what are the Necron secondaries that are so terrifying?
Yeah, so 4 of them, I'm in my like personal experience, what I think are like strongest to like, I guess most,
sure,
I guess least strongest, yeah. The strongest, I believe, is Purge the Vermin. That is the one that at the end of your turn, you get a victory point for keeping a quadrant. If a quadrant doesn't have an enemy unit wholly within it, and an additional victory point if your deployment zone doesn't have an enemy unit wholly within it.
And is that at the end of your turn or the end of the battle round?
End of player turn. So end of the next player's turn. So you go first, you get 3. If you're playing a corner mission, you go first, you get 4. I guess not corner mission, a sweep and clear deployment. Very silly. I picked it every single game I played. I have scored a 15 on it. I think every single game with this list. I had other versions without Catan that I didn't score 15. But with the Catan list, I've scored a 15 on it with every single game. Yeah. The next one that I think is silly is Treasures of the Aeons. This is one where after both players resolve like pre-battle abilities, so like after you do something first, your opponent picks 3 objectives that aren't in either player's deployment zone, and those become the Treasures of the Aeons. The Necron player needs to control those at the end of their turn. They get 2 points for controlling 1, 3 points for controlling 2, and 5 points for controlling all 3. So it's basically more flexible Stranglehold, which was removed from the game because everyone took it. So now I can just keep playing Stranglehold, except I can choose whether I want to be more aggressive to get more points or more defensive and still get 2 points.
Makes perfect sense.
The next one down the tier is Ancient Machineries. This is a action-based one. It's Shadow Ops. I can do an action on any objective not in my deployment zone. So any of the midfield or any one of my opponent's side of the board. I need to control the objective to start the action. The action completes at the end of my turn if I'm OBSEC, or at the end of my next command phase if I'm not. And it gives me 4 points per objective scanned. And you cannot scan the same objective more than once. And
your whole army being OBSEC basically just means that everyone who's not a Catan shard does it at the end of your turn.
Yeah, and that's important to know. Only Core and Canoptek can do it. But
fair. Okay.
Everything in my army except the
Catan shards
characters and the 2 Catan shards. Yeah, the king is enough, so he can do it now. But he's not OBSEC, so he doesn't. But he's not OBSEC.
Okay, so yeah, the king would have to spend the whole battle round doing it.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, there's a theme that I'm detecting there. A lot of get up the board really quick, a lot of get on the objectives, and a lot of do stuff that stops it. Like, if I'm fast enough to get there, it doesn't matter if you kill me next turn because I've already done the thing that I need to do and gotten my points.
Yeah, so those are the 3 ones that usually go down the more defensive-oriented route. And there's another one that's still very strong, which isn't usually how the list operates, but sometimes the list can operate aggressively. And this one is Code of Combat. And that secondary is every time a noble unit kills an enemy unit with a range attack, you get 3 points. Every time they kill a enemy unit with a melee attack, you get 4 points. So Silent King is a bit of a beast now.
Sure. Does that mean that he can, on a single turn, roll up, shoot a unit of trash dead, then charge a different unit of trash and net 7 in a single turn?
Yeah, I think I've gotten 10 on a turn on this objective before. I've shot 2 things and punched another thing. So, yeah.
Okay.
It's really, really good into MSU.
Yeah, I can see.
So that's why I think that one's the least egregious, because it's like there's a certain type of list you have to play against for that one to be good. And
sure.
The other 3 are just kind of.
And in your current build, there's like literally only a single model that can score it, right? It's just what the Silent King kills.
Just the Silent King. So if I think my opponent can ace him, I definitely don't want to pick that secondary.
Definitely. But yeah, there are some battles when you're playing into like MSU Eldar or something like that, where you're just like, oh, look, cool. I'm just going to get a easy 7 to 10 points whenever the Silent King comes out by himself. So, boom.
Yep.
Sounds terrifying, actually. All right. So we're going to go ahead and move on down to our next question. This one's a little bit more of a free-form one, but mostly, do you have any specific missions that noticeably modify this plan? Like, are there any of the wacky deployments that throw you off kilter? And from what you just said, it doesn't really actually sound like there is, because normally it's like the sweep and clear missions that tend to throw people off a little bit, but it sounds like you're just living your best life because you have the mobility to get to all the objectives. If you go first, you automatically get 4 points on Purge the Vermin. It just sounds like the free move plus the extra speed you get from your whatchamacallit, your protocol just gives you all the mobility, and because everything's obsec, you just got to go touch stuff.
Yeah. Most missions are pretty good. There's one mission I played that actually was very wacky, and that was Data Scry Salvage. So that one, the deployment zone is like really long, which actually makes Purge the Vermin kind of difficult because your opponent can like get something into that like far corner near I think their safe objectives, like near the objectives closer to their deployment zone. And not only are they denying you the point for keeping your DZ clear, they could cross the middle line and deny for that quadrant.
That's true.
So it gets a little tough there because while I do have +1 inch move and like Necrons are fairly quick, like Scorpax move 10. I'm not the quickest. Like I can't go from the top objectives on Data Scry to the bottom objectives on Data Scry in a turn. So I'm trying to keep my safe objectives under my control and my opponent's just like throwing trash in like that bottom corner every turn, it's actually really annoying. So it kind of turns into, okay, do I like castle up in the bottom corner of my deployment zone and fight my opponent over their safe objectives and then just like leave those alone? And I don't love it. I played into a Word Bearer MSU on that, and it kind of felt like I was being pulled in different directions. He didn't really try to pressure that like pocket though. He didn't like, I think what it is there are some like elite enough armies that aren't going to be willing to throw a unit over there just to deny points, but into like a more like trash based army, like maybe like Eldar with Rangers or like GSC, like forces is coming back. I think Purge the Vermin on Data Scry might be a little tough into those armies.
That's fair. So, and just like again, briefly commenting on the list, you have 3 6-man units of Scorpack destroyers. I would just like to take this moment as a brief aside to comment on just how absurdly hard you can make those units hit. Because the Silent King, I was on the receiving end of this. The Silent King, My Will Be Done's them, so now they're hitting on 2s. They're destroyers, so they innately reroll once to hit. If they're within range of the Silent King, they get full rerolls to wound in close combat. And you can inject them with Tainted Energy for +1 strength, +1 attack, and then you can have the command protocol for another +1 strength. So it's and then their core now, so they get access to that strat that gives them an additional +1 strength. So you can get like the normal dudes hitting at strength 8, and they're just re-rolling effectively all hits into wounds. I watched these guys take a fully healthy knight, Imperial Knight, with a 6-up Theono Pain and 26 wounds, and just one round it, full to dead. So that is something of the hitting power that this list brings. Just as an aside for everybody.
And that's the idea, is like I want them to cross into that Scorpack threat range so I can bonk them.
I know, definitely. And also they're most of the time going to be speed 10 Scorpacks, so they're not even really all that slow, and they get a 6-inch pregame move. It's a largely it is a deceptive amount of threat up the table very quickly in the matchups where that's relevant. And otherwise, you can just go spread out onto the table, take the objectives, and dare your opponent to come do something about it, knowing that you're probably going to be able to send your Scorpack bullet out and trade up for something.
Yep. On the missions as well, kind of just talking about like one other weird thing. I've definitely found that 6 objective missions are a little bit wackier than 5 objective missions. Because of Treasures of the Aeons, your opponent gets to pick 3 objectives. On 6 objective missions like Tide of Conviction or Recover the Relics, they pick the 2 safe ones on their side, and then they probably pick your most exposed ones on your side. So you're still going to get a 10 if you never go to their side of the board, but I'd like to get a little more than a 10 on a secondary sometimes, so that's just something to keep in mind. Ancient Machineries is also like kind of easier because you have those 2 right in front of yourself. I guess Scouring's also the same, right? Scouring, well, I'll talk about Scouring in a second, actually. So Ancient Machineries is a little easy because it's like you got the 2 right in front of you, but you do need to go get one on your opponent's side of the board at some point. I often find Ancient Machineries as a 12 because you maybe like rocket over and take your opponent's least protected objective on their side, and then you get the 2 on your side of the board, and you're good.
And especially like if you go, like on turn 1, you can just advance move up 6 inches, a unit of Tomb Blades, then send them 16, 17 more inches, and then have them action
16.
Yeah.
Yep. You could have them go like 22.
22, and just like go grab it, like suicide, do the action on your opponent's side of the table, top of 1, and then who cares? They've gotten me my points. It was 60 points. I don't care.
So something that's also weird is about the Scouring, because none of the objectives are in anyone's deployment zone, I believe.
So you can pick anything.
With Treasures, they pick the 2 on their side in the midfield. So that one's like, okay, if you like, lose the defender roll off to player placed, they're gonna probably make the midfield not safe for you. So maybe don't pick treasures.
That makes sense.
But Ancient Machineries is pretty easy on that one because you only need to like scan the middle and the 2 on your side. So,
sure.
Yeah. Just something to keep in mind there with treasures.
Definitely. All right, we're going to go to our last question on the basic section, which is what are the standout unit/combos of the list? We've already talked a little bit about the absurd hitting power and speed and flexibility of the Scorpek Destroyer units. I'm personally interested in the Catan shards because I know personally that they mess up the Eldar and specifically the Sisters of Battle matchups. So, talk to me a little bit about the Catan shards. What do they do?
Yeah, so the Catan shards are a unique challenge for a lot of armies. There's a lot of armies that are only active in 2 phases right now. And I mean, I guess Eldar are active in multiple, but the armies, there's a lot of armies that don't have a lot of like mortal wound defense. The mortal wounds aren't psychic powers, so they can't be interacted with. And most notably are, there's like 3 powers that I think are very, very strong. The most notable is Sky of Falling Stars. So that is the power that a Catan Shard can do, which is pick 3 enemy units within 24 inches, do not need line of sight, roll under their squad size, and then they take D3 mortals, and a 6 auto fails. So that's really bad for Sisters, really bad for Eldar when they're full of these one wound models. So like every mortal really hurts them.
And like the no line of sight rider there is just be within 24 inches, period. I don't really care if I can see you or not.
And something about Sisters, their threat range, their max threat range is 24 inches. Like we all know that. They have a guaranteed 24. So they always want to sit within 24 of you. And I'm okay with that. Here's the Catan. They're going to draw mortals on you. Do you want to back up outside of 24 and not threaten me anymore? I don't know.
It's true. And Sisters, I imagine, they don't really have a whole lot of ways to do wounds outside of the shooting and assault phases.
They have 2. They have end of movement phase Seraphim Handflamer stratagem.
That makes sense.
And then they have the Smite Prayer that they could do they could do in the command phase, or they could use the stratagem to auto chant it at the start of any phase.
Got it. Okay. So they have a couple of options, but they can like screen out the deep strikes and just not get crazy close with the prayer. But yes, so in general, if you just like put a Catan Shard like just barely 24 inches away from a unit of Repentia, and then you just say, come get some. The Repentia, if they don't have anything else on it, the Repentia aren't going to be able to go and remove that thing like they can almost anything else in the game. They're just going to get there, they're going to do their 3, and then the Catan Shard is just going to go patty cake and kill them all. Cool.
Yeah, and even if my opponent does have like 3 or 4 phases of, wounds that they can deal, damage they can deal, the Catan Shards just like require so much resources to remove. And they also require so much like thinking from your opponent. Like, okay, how am I going to like make this work? So it's just like a lot of like dedication that they're putting into that. And if I can like leverage that dedication, like use that moment where they commit to killing it, maybe I can pounce on them with my army. Like they're going to have to throw resources at it. It's a trade piece that's like not just like a 1-for-1. It's like you were trading multiple things for this piece. Mostly, and then I'm going to go kill all those pieces in response.
No, certainly. So I guess, and also for no one who's ever fought a Catan, they have the living metal rule, which means that they heal 1 at the beginning of every turn, which on a 9-wound phase-locked model is far more critical than you'd think, because you can't just decide that you're going to do 3 wounds every shooting phase, and then at the 3rd shooting phase, it's over and it's done with. It actually ups it to 4. And that is mathematically problematic for someone who wants to kill it in just a shooting phase. So the last question I have for the front part is why the Void Dragon over just a second Transcendent Catan?
Yeah, so he does cost 70 points more, and that is like a decent amount of stuff. So I've been thinking about it myself. Something that I think this list has a lot of trouble into is Knights, Imperial Knights, Chaos Knights. Yeah. And I need some sort of hard-hitting piece that doesn't just die. Like Scorpex go out there, they charge a big knight and kill it, with the relevant buffs. They charge like 2 or 3 baby knights and kill them with the relevant buffs. They die instantly on the way back. Like I've played into 14 shooting dogs, and they just, pick up Scorpex. I played into Eurolist, picks up Scorpex. So everything that goes out there dies. The king as well. He dies to calculated targeting data. If he goes in, he's trading. The Void Dragon can kind of just waltz around, and he hits hard. Like a normal Transcendent Catan is 5 attacks at 646. That's not good in a knight. It's going to wound every knight on a 5. The Void Dragon is 5 attacks at 9/4 D3+3 because you get the D3+3 damage into a vehicle. He's
and then
unique
for
power
2 CP,
as well. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Just for 2 CP, he could ignore Invuln. So if you have a knight with an Invuln in close combat, he can just pop right through that too.
Yep. And his unique power is a Super Smite into vehicles. He has a shooting attack that's 12-inch range. Is a Dark Lance into vehicles. Sure. So he hits vehicles really hard. And also, something that's really cool into those armies is at the end of any phase in which he killed a vehicle, you roll a d6 for each vehicle he killed, and on a 2-up he heals a wound to a cap of 3.
That
so definitely bump him up another bracket.
Yeah, 100%. That can give you a whole extra phase you have to spend killing him, and that is combined with his living metal heal. That can get pretty rough. Okay, I think that's what we're going to go ahead and call the early part. That is our part 1, everybody. Thank you for joining us. And if you want to get some more advanced stuff, join us in the advanced section here in just a second.
Unmute. Well, that was actually very interesting. And again, props to producer Chris. That last fade out logo was very fun. Everyone, that is the end of our show. Benny, would you like to say anything on your way out? Plug any place we can see you if we found you just totally mellifluous and wonderful.
Oh, I'd just like to plug another show on the Best in Tabletop Network that I'm one of the co-hosts on, 40K Frontiers. We do it. Kind of boots on the ground kind of review of Asia and the Pacific. So there's 2 of us in Australia, 1 of us in New Zealand, and 1 of us just landed in South Korea. And we try to shine lights on places which are not necessarily too considered in the 40K world, or even really heard of. So we're just trying to do our bit to give them a bit of a spotlight. So I think this week we got a bit of a couple of the guys from Contact Lost podcast from Poland on, so that's pretty exciting. Yeah, so that's actually come out live tonight. So hopefully the rest of the pod will fall into kind of place in the next couple of weeks. So yeah, it's good.
Lovely.
Exciting.
Well, Benny, thank you for coming on, proving hopefully to all of the listeners that this model works when Colin's not around. Colin will be back next week along with me. I don't have any travel planned. But with that, I've been Billy. He's been Benny. It goes this way. Thank you all so much for watching, and see you next week. Bye-bye.
Bye.